Hi everyone. So now that we've covered how to source in China, how to find the factories, how to find the products in the earlier video, what we're going to do now is go over some of the questions we need to ask suppliers when we first make contact with them or sometime during the conversation before we place any order. And usually I send a shorter initial email to the factories through Alibaba or global sources to get the conversation going. But sooner or later, once I've narrowed down which factories I want to work with, I give them a longer email to get all of the details I need together about them, about the product, so that then I can make an educated decision about which factories I want to move to the next steps with. So what I'm going to go over with you today is an example letter that I might send via email to the factory after I've had the initial response on Alibaba and filtered down to the top 10 or 15 suppliers. If I'm sourcing a particular item, let's say in this case an iPhone 6 case, I will contact every single factory available on Alibaba, on global sources, via the sourcing channels, because I want the best price, the best factory, the best quality, and all the information on the product I can. I pull that all together to then make the most educated decision about how I should proceed for that product. And oftentimes, that's a whole education on a particular product right there. With the emails back from every different kind of factory, you learn something different from every single email and every single factory. And then you're narrowing down to what really is the best few suppliers in the entire world market for that product. Okay, so just starting off, what I usually do is give the factories a brief introduction into who we are. I've just done this as a complete example letter. You should replace it with your own information. This is just a fake company name to give you an example. So we are blah blah kitchen products LLC. Our head office is in USA. We opened in 2006. Our main markets are, and there you would go on to give them a short 3 or 4 lines about your company, what your products are. Give them a little bit of background. You're selling to the factory at the same time that they're selling to you. You want them to feel that you're a professional importer for this product, that they want to work with you. The more keen they are, if there's any problems encountered later, the more likely they are to fix them because they think that you're a worthwhile customer. If they think you're a one-off customer, they may not make the same effort to fix any issues that possibly come up, or you might not get such quick responses. So it's in your competitive interest to seem as professional in this market as possible without lying. So if you're new to it, you can say that you've done previous products before, you're now expanding into this line, etc., etc. But you do need to sell to the factory your company. Okay, so first few questions I would ask the factory are usually admin. I want to know where their office is and where their showroom is and where their factory address is, because I want to know if it's really the factory. What some people you contact via Alibaba will tell you is, oh yes, we have a sales office in the center of Shenzhen, but our factory's in somewhere called Longgang or Guangzhou. And what they might have a separate sales office and a separate factory, but oftentimes what you find is that the factory is the factory and they have a showroom at the factory, and there's this agent claiming to be part of the factory but is actually a separate sales office, and they might be selling multiple factories' products. Factories tend to specialize in a very narrow range of products, and so if you come across a supplier who is able to do quite a wide range, let's say iPhone 6 cases but also earphones, well, they're making one of them in their factory and the other is being traded from someone else. They're buying it and reselling it to you, or both items are being traded. It's very unlikely that they have one factory that can produce multiple different items. So the items are quite substantially different. Then most likely the person who's claiming to make all of them is actually using multiple different factories to supply to you. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, all you care about is that you get good quality products at a reasonable price. But what you do need to know is Where's it coming from? Is the quality being controlled? Who's in the supply chain? So it's worth digging in. And some of the best ways to find this out is early on with these simple questions. What's your office address? In English and Chinese. Look it up on Google. What's their showroom address? Is it at the factory? Is it separate? What's the factory address? Look all of these things up on Google. Look at the photos. Look at the signs of the companies in the photos. I know this seems obvious, but some Chinese factories do switch around their signs for customer visits. And so you're initially checking who's in the supply chain. Who am I dealing with? Am I dealing with the factory direct, an agent, a trading company, a one-man band? And that's why before every order, myself or someone on my team will visit the factory to check who it is exactly we're dealing with. Do they have the quality control process in place? Are they who they say they are? Have they been making these products for a number of years? So that's really what these next set of questions that I ask are about. I want to know about the factory profile, the size, their revenue, their staff numbers, how many production staff they have, what machines they have. I ask them what their main products are, their markets, and their main customers. And the reason for all of this is I want to get a good overview of how experienced are these as this factory in this particular product. I mean, if it's a factory of 30 staff claiming to have a big revenue and customers all around the world, it's something I really want to. I don't mind if it's a small factory. I don't mind if it's a big factory. I just want to know exactly who I'm dealing with. And most of the time, agents, trading companies, and factories all lie throughout the supply chain, that they're bigger than there are, that they have more experience than they have, that their quality control processes are perfect, everything's going to be fine, because once they get that order from you, then the ball's in their court and they're in control. Not that they're trying to screw you, some are, but not everyone, very few. But the reality is you have to do as much due diligence as possible up front to know exactly who it is you're working with. So the answers they come back with to this, some may send you a PDF, a beautiful 20-page PDF of all about them. Others might not reply to any of your questions and just answer one or two of them. It's just those responses will start to give you a feel about, is this someone I want to work with or not? That's the key to all of this. You're narrowing down from potentially hundreds of suppliers down to your top 5 for samples maybe, and then your top 2 or 3 to go visit before placing an order. So then I'm asking factories to send me their catalog and new product pictures to my email. This is obviously a fake email just for example purposes, but sourcing@mydomain.com. And I recommend you set up a completely separate sourcing email for dealing with factories and suppliers. That way it doesn't interfere with your normal inbox. And the reason I ask for new product pictures in the catalog, because on websites such as Alibaba.com, globalsources.com, at trade shows, they might not be showing all of their products, or they might have just created something new and it's not on those websites yet. And they may send you pictures while it's still being developed, so you get to see items well before anyone else. And again, in their catalog, they may have additional items that haven't been shown in their showroom or elsewhere. And I usually ask for a printed version of the catalog, because the e-versions that they send, the Excel files with quotes, tend also to have gaps. The Chinese salespeople don't show you everything. They don't understand your market. Some of them have never been to the US or Europe. They don't know what people like in those markets. They just know from their own point of view. So when they're sending you 10 pictures of different products they have, they've randomly selected 10 pictures from thousands. Well, they don't know which 10 that you're going to most likely to want. Maybe one of their US customers liked 2 or 3 of those photos before, so they think that those are the right pictures. But in the 990 photos they don't send you might be some gems of products that are really, really good and great value, but they haven't shown you at all. So you've got to constantly push the factories and the salespeople and the agents you're dealing with to send you catalogs, new product photos, as soon as anything new is available. I also ask for the showroom photos, because 1, I want to see where it is, but 2, I want to see what other items they have that maybe they haven't shown me yet. Okay, so then the next questions and points I make in the contact email to the factory is I tell them what exactly I'm looking for, and depending on the item depends the level of specification. If I was doing something, for example, like a packaging, I would go into details of most likely what paper I want. I want 300 grams per square meter paper, what kind of finish, 4-color print, one-sided, etc. So here what you want to do is look online, take several initial supply emails that you've got, and before you go back to them with a more detailed request for a full price, is to create a full specification of the exact item you're looking for. I mean, an iPhone 6 mobile phone case is enough specification for that particular item because they have the size from the phone. The industry is very saturated. Everyone in the industry knows exactly, what size it is, what materials are available, etc. But if you're doing something slightly new, you're designing a new, let's say, backpack, for example. Well, here it's gray as to what the size could be. It could be small, it could be big. Therefore, you need to specify. I want a 50-liter backpack. These kind of materials. Do you have anything similar? What's the kind of price range for your existing items? So depending on your item, depends what you need to put here. But what you really need to narrow it down to is a detailed enough specification that they can give you an accurate final quote. So the materials, the size, the quantities, everything needs to be in there so that they can give you a decent price. And if you've gone on Alibaba and Global Sources and emailed 100, 200 suppliers in your market, they would have come back with different points on the product, asking you different questions. Do you want nylon or lycra? Do you want silicone or carbon fiber? You can then combine all of those questions to create your specification and request back to the factories when you're finalizing the item that you want. So what I've done here is what materials can you do, and I've given them a list. In this particular market, I know that these are all possible. So if I'm contacting this factory about an iPhone 6 case, I want to know which of these materials they specialize in. It's very unlikely they can do all, and their price for aluminium might be great and the price for everything else might be rubbish. Hence, whichever item you're doing, if you're doing a bag item, for example, one factory might be really, really competitive in nylon and the other might be much, much better in cotton. That's why you want to contact as broad a range of suppliers as possible and just compare and see what you get back. In the early stages of sourcing, it's purely a numbers game. There's a lot of grind to it. You've got to contact as many different suppliers and factories and product options as possible and chisel away and narrow down until you get to somewhere where you feel you've got a final specification, a final price, then you're requesting final samples, and then you can move forward. So what I'm usually asking the factory is to send me photos of their similar items. I want a price for the similar items that I'm asking for. Usually MOQ, which is a minimum order quantity, 5,000 pieces, 10,000 pieces. It really depends on the item as to what quantity that is. It may be, if it's a bigger, heavy item such as a sofa, it may be that I'm asking for 100 and 300 pieces price, or a 20-foot container and a 40-foot container. It really depends. You'll get a feel for what the quantity should be based on the emails you get back from factories, but also you can specify whatever prices that you want. If you're comfortable ordering 500 and 1,000, they may come back to you and say, no, sorry, the minimum order is 3,000. And another factory might tell you 10,000, and another factory might tell you, okay, yeah, we can do 300 for you. Our minimum order is only 200. So again, all of these questions, there's no right and wrong when you're dealing with China or a factory or a supplier. It's grey. You've got to put out all of the feelers and get back all of the information, chew on it, and then go back and forth a bit until you finalize something. Okay, and then what I want to know from the factories is the sample price. Usually it's between the unit price of the item, and it can be 5 times the unit price of the item. It could be a flat $100 fee. I don't really mind, because what I'm doing during this process is I'm narrowing down to 5 suppliers, and then I'm asking those 4 or 5 suppliers to send me a sample. That might cost me $50 to $100 each, so I'm paying $200 to $500 for samples from 5 different factories. But then I'm comparing the quality of the materials, the factories, the price, everything that's related to the product, so that I can finalize which 1 or 2 factories I think are qualified and the best overall value and price for me to move forward with. Another thing I ask the factories is, how can I brand the product? And I ask them to show me photos of other people's products where they've branded. So it could be a silkscreen logo, it could be embossed, debossed, etched, label, tag. There's many different ways they can do it. It really depends on the item. Something which is plastic or metal, maybe the only way to brand it onto the item itself is to pay for new tooling, which is expensive. So they may offer you a printing, such as silkscreen printing, as a cheaper way to add the logo, and that should be somewhere between 2 and 5 cents. Whereas if it's a fabric product, it's much cheaper to make a custom label, for example, that you can then stitch onto the product directly. It really depends on the item as to which type of logo, which type of branding you can do. The next thing I'm asking the factories is, please show us your standard packaging. Again, I'm just looking how they pack this particular item, and also for some inspiration on different ways that they've packaged similar items in the past, so that when I'm coming around to creating my packaging, I can apply some of those ideas. Maybe some other customer selling to Israel or Germany has some really great packaging design, and all I'm doing is just changing it a little bit and then taking it for the US market. So by asking the factory to supply the photos of what they're already doing, you'll get ideas for ways of packaging that particular item that you haven't considered before. So the whole sourcing process, as is this email, is just purely fact finding. Up until the very last stages, that's when you're making decisions. But this is just, okay, let's gather as much information as possible about the product, the logo, the branding, the packaging, the factories, the supply chain, the certification, the prices, the lead times. Then we can make an informed decision as to how we move forward. And at first, when you're doing this, it's all quite a lengthy manual process. But as you get used to it, it's almost like you have a laser. You know which factories are good or not in an instant. You know which products, which materials will suit, how you can improve the product. When you're first dealing with manufacturing, it's all new and alien, just like when you're first learning to ride a bicycle. But sooner or later, you can go on that thing at 40 kilometers or 50 or 60 kilometers an hour. And it's the same with doing the sourcing. At the beginning, you're just going to be falling over. It's going to be slow. You're going to scratch your knees a bit. But as you get into this, you'll be able to really quickly design and develop new items. I tend to ask the factory, how can I increase the quality of the item? Most people don't consider that. They just take the existing factory product, but maybe you can change from single stitching to double stitching, thereby making your bag product extra strong. Maybe you can change from 300D polyester to 600D polyester, and the increase in price might be 10%, but it makes the quality of the item seem so much better. So these questions that I presented here, you wouldn't blast the factory all in one go the very first time you contacted them with all of these questions. You're sending an initial email introducing yourself, asking for a price and the type of item that you want, getting some information back, and narrowing down on the response, then going into depth on these questions with those factories. You ask for their Skype as well, so you can discuss some of these questions on Skype. It may take several emails back and forth. It's unavoidable that you need to do that because there's so much information to narrow down to get to the final item that you will need to go back and forth with multiple questions to clarify everything. So expect it. What are your best-selling items this year? Also, You might be surprised to find out one of their FM transmitters is doing extremely well in some market. Then dig into that. Why is it doing so well? Have a look at the product, maybe get a sample. Just more facts. You don't know where any of this stuff can lead. Just like a visit to the factory, while I've been touring factories, I've seen multiple competitors' products being made, for example, or products for customers in other markets, and it's given me lots of ideas for new things to develop. Our inspection is normally AQL 1.5 major, 2.0 minor. This is the subject of a whole separate video on quality control, but early in the discussion, you need to specify what your quality standard is going to be for any pre-shipment inspection. A pre-shipment inspection is just what the name says. It's a shipment. It's an inspection before the shipment of the goods out of China, and AQL is just a statistical analysis method for selecting how many products you take out of the shipment and how many you check, how many defects are allowed. And usually I tell them that if the factory is selected, I'll visit them to discuss further, and I do. And I used to visit 3 to 4 factories in a single day, 5 or 6 days a week, all around southern China. And the reason for this is I learned so much from visiting factories. I got a much better price by visiting factories. I saw new items that I could add in. We spotted potential problems early. I built the relationship. There's a lot of benefits to visiting a factory. The negative is a bit of time and money, but the positive is long-term, much better value product. Okay, so overall, there's a lot of questions there, a lot of points to bring up with a factory that you need to discuss. I haven't covered absolutely everything. There will be other stuff depending on your specific item. And that's the whole point of this process, is to actually dig in and see if there's anything you missed as well. You'll notice that from their responses. Maybe they come back asking you questions that you hadn't considered before. So just expect the whole sourcing process of developing a new item to take time, and in your own mind, your goal should not be to rush this and get this done as soon as possible, but to allow a set period of time, let's say 2 or 3 weeks of back and forth with multiple factories, to get to a stage where you feel that you're really informed on the product, enough so that you're ready to proceed to ask 3 to 5 factories for samples. When you get those samples, you review them, and then you feel confident enough. I really do recommend you visit the factory before placing the order, and then you place the order with the factory that you feel delivers the most value, as well as knowing that you've covered every available option, done your due diligence. And that's just the beginning still, because you do need to inspect during the production and before shipment, but at least you know you've covered all of the potential materials, the different costs the item could be, etc.